Hello, accounting students. Welcome back. We are now going to talk about job order costing, that's chapter 4, and process costing, that is chapter 5 in this audio recording. Now, what's the difference between the two? Well, job order costing is appropriate when you are doing your work one job or one batch at a time. Think movie studios creating movies. Think a customized cookie company where people send in their custom orders for certain types of cookies, and they make cookies one batch at a time on a customized basis. That's different than commodity products or services that simply flow in a continuous production stream. Think oil and gas, energy companies that produce energy products on a continuous stream. Think milk companies where the milk is just continuously poured, out of the udder of the cow, of course, into pails, into pipes, into processing machines, and eventually into a never-ending stream of milk cartons, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. Doing work job by job, often on a highly customized basis, is simply very different than doing work on one continuous stream. And therefore, the cost process needs to be different for each of these two types of methods. Now, to get a taste of job order costing, let's go to chapter 4, subchapter or section 4.3, using the job order costing method to trace the flow of costs through different accounts. Okay, so we're at 4.3. What's the first thing that you do? Well, bounce down or scroll down below figure 4.15 and look at the section entitled Raw Materials Inventory. Okay, let's say that you are making customized cookies on special orders, a special order basis, and you're using the job order costing process to figure out the cost of each batch. If you want to figure out the cost of producing a special batch of cookies, first thing that you want to do is ask yourself, how much cookie dough am I using for this batch today? Well, if you look at the raw materials inventory little box, there's a 5-line little box with a little equation. First, you want to figure out what your beginning materials inventory is. In other words, did you use some cookie dough yesterday that you started with this morning to produce today's special batch of cookies? Next, did you buy and use additional cookie dough, new materials purchased today to add to the batch? Next, and finally, did you finish the entire batch? Or was there some cookie dough that you added to the batch today that is actually still sitting there at the end of the day because you're going to wrap up your costing process or the production of the cookies tomorrow. To figure out how much raw material, cookie dough, you are using in production today. It is the amount that you started using yesterday that you're rolling into production today, plus new amounts that you purchased and started to use today, minus the amount of the dough that you started using today, but that will not be finished until tomorrow. That tells you the amount of cookie dough, raw material, you're using in production today. Next up, the work in process inventory section. Okay, find that section in your textbook, and then once again, scroll down to the end of that section, and you will find another box with a few lines of formula in it. As you can see, we are calculating manufacturing costs incurred in the middle of that box, and then the cost of cookies finished or completed or manufactured at the end of the box. Well, let's look at manufacturing costs incurred first. How much money did we spend on manufacturing resources today to make that batch of specialty cookies? Well, we just said that we used a certain amount of cookie dough. That's direct raw material in production. That number that we just calculated is part of the total amount of cost to produce cookies that we incurred today. But cookie dough, raw material, is not the only substance that we used. We used a lot of direct labor, meaning people worked on the cookies today. And then there's a wide variety of odds and ends. Everything from the vegetable oil to the grease that we needed to put on the machinery so that the cookie dough didn't gum up the works. Those are overhead items. And so to compute manufacturing costs incurred today in total, we begin with the cost of cookie dough. Yes, we already discussed that. Add the cost of the people, the workers, the direct laborers, and then add the odds and ends, the overhead. That's how much resources or costs we incurred or used today. But what is the cost of the cookies that we actually completed today? Well, you would hope if we incurred cost to build cookies or to produce cookies, the goal is to complete them today. However, not all of the cookies that we began working on today were completed today. There are some partially completed cookies that will still be there at the end of the day, ending work in process inventory, that will actually complete tomorrow. And as a result, the total amount of cookies completed today is the amount of cookies we worked on, those manufacturing costs incurred, minus the portion of what we worked on today that we will complete tomorrow, the ending work in process inventory. And oh, by the way, look at the very, very top of that box. Do you see beginning work in process inventory? Why is that there? Well, if we actually began working on cookies yesterday that we completed early this morning, they should be included in the final count of the cookies completed today. And therefore, we have to add that number to our total, which is why beginning work in process inventory is part of the formula at the top of that box. Okay, so now we know how many cookies, or the cost of those cookies, we completed today. But how many of those cookies did we actually sell? In fact, just asking more generally, how many cookies did we sell today? And what were the cost of those sales? To figure that out, we have yet another formula in a box in the following section called Finished Goods Inventory. What is the cost of the cookies that we sold today? Well, let's begin with the cookies that we finished yesterday that we presumably sold first thing this morning. Those would be the beginning finished goods inventory cookies. If we then manufactured and finished more cookies over the course of today, well, we presumably sold them too, except there might be a few of the cookies that we produced or manufactured today that will not sell today. So we'll have to hold on to them overnight and hopefully sell them tomorrow morning. Well then, total amount of cookies sold today, and more specifically the cost of those cookies, is the amount that we had finished in inventory ready for sale first thing this morning, beginning of day, plus hopefully everything we produced and finished today, except the portion of that we might have to hold on to tonight to sell tomorrow. Beginning finished goods inventory plus cost of goods manufactured and completed today minus the ending finished goods cookie inventory is the cost of cookies sold today. And once you know that, you pretty much have the information that you need to prepare your financial statements, more specifically, your income statement, because revenues minus the cost of cookies sold minus other business expenses equals net income. And that's the cookie business. That is job order costing. For a taste, if you will, of process costing and how it differs from job order costing, let's go to Chapter 5, and more specifically, section or subchapter 5.3. Explain and compute equivalent units and total cost of production in an initial processing stage. Now, what I'd like to ask you to do, there are a few steps that you need to go through, but let's jump down to step 2. As you can see, in step 2, we are producing, let's say, milk on a continuous stream basis. How many units, let's say gallons of milk, did we process today? Well, we worked on a lot of milk today, most of which we poured into cartons and sent out to be sold. Some of which, however, we have to hold on to at the end of the day to sell tomorrow. Keep in mind, this is a continuous stream. So when I say we're holding on to some of the milk to process today and then to continue processing tomorrow, what I really mean is that at 11:59 p.m., there is still some milk in our pipeline. And we'll continue to work on it beginning at 12:01 a.m. first thing tomorrow morning in a continuous stream until it gets poured into cartons and is sent out. How much? Well, look at the box at the end of step 2, computing the equivalent units of production. It looks like we worked on or processed 8,700 gallons of milk. It looks like we finished and sent out to the market 7,500 gallons. And at midnight, at the end of the day, there are still 1,200 gallons to continue to be processed and sent to market tomorrow. Those 8,700 gallons of milk, the milk is all there. Look at the material units. The 7,500 gallons of milk that we shipped today to market had 7,500 gallons of milk. The 1,200 gallons of milk that was still in process at 12:01 a.m. tomorrow morning had 1,200 gallons of milk. In other words, the units of material are equal to the total units that we're working on. Well, you might say, of course it is. What else would it be? Look at conversion units. This is the work that one has to do to, let's say, pasteurize the milk. Well, the 7,500 gallons of milk that was sent to market today was fully pasteurized, and therefore in that conversion unit column we see the full 7,500. However, the 1,200 gallons of milk that we're still working on at the end of the day were not fully pasteurized. It looks like only a little more than a third of those 1,200 gallons were pasteurized. And as a result, the pasteurization conversion process is only a little bit more than a third complete. That's why we have only 420 of the 1,200 units in ending work in process showing up in the conversion column. So when it comes to allocating your costs between the milk that you completed and shipped to market today and the milk that you're still holding on to in mid-pasteurization process at the end of the day to be shipped to market tomorrow, you could say all of that milk gets cost allocations to reflect the cost of the raw milk that is going into all of that process. However, when it comes to the cost of pasteurization, you need to remember the milk that was shipped today was fully pasteurized and should get the full cost of the pasteurization process. Whereas the milk that we're still holding on to until tomorrow was only partially pasteurized, and thus, as of the end of the day today, has only incurred a portion of the full cost of the pasteurization process. I hope you find this helpful. As a final comment, I'd like to say that this topic is a part of management accounting that we refer to as cost accounting. It's one of the oldest areas of management accounting, and if you are particularly interested in cost allocation methods, you will be following along in the footsteps of individuals who have specialized in this area of accounting for, at this point, well over a century. So you will be in good company. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation about chapters 4 and 5. I do look forward to continuing our conversation with the next module, when we will discuss activity-based costing, chapter 6, and budgeting techniques, chapter 7.